this city. Amen. I wish to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we stand and pay my respects to their elders past and present. Are there any apologies for this meeting?
Apology from Councillor Cook.
Thank you. Do I have a mover that council accept the apology? Councillor Taylor, thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Ziegler, thank you. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Councillors, at item 3 on the agenda, we have a recommendation before us to confirm the minutes of a scheduled meeting of council held on 4th of September 2023. Do I have a mover? Councillor Taylor, thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Paspaliaris, thank you. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Are there any declarations of conflicts of interest this evening? No, thank you. September is Youth Fest, and it's a month of celebrating our young people, their creativity, their talent and contributions to our community. The Arto Listening exhibition at the F Project involved 80 young people exhibiting their artwork as part of the Southwest Youth Fest. And I was really impressed with the quality and variety of work that was displayed. It is exciting to see the talent that we have amongst our youth. And this exhibition is open until October 15, and I strongly recommend going along and just having a look. There are some artworks for sale as well, so it's just a really good way to encourage these young people in our community. Council is currently working on some infrastructure to help alleviate flooding issues in Japan Street, and it's an area that's long been a problem. Basins are being installed under the road to capture storm water during heavy rain and slowly release it back into the drainage system. These basins will hold up to 960,000 litres of water, which is about 1.5 times the amount of the 25-metre indoor pool at Aquazone. And we recognise that the geography will always be a risk. This project will surely help. It's a big job. It's expected to be finished in late November, and I would like to thank everyone involved in this project, and especially the residents that live around that area for their patience. The new amenities block at McGuinness was officially opened last week, and the new building was identified as a priority in our Lake Toad Master Plan, and it offers much improved accessibility, baby change tables, bench seats, showers and a safer design. We now have a robust and stylish building that will be able to withstand the tough weather conditions that we can experience, and we know that it will now last decades. It's also been completed in time for hopefully a very busy tourist season. So congratulations to the local contractors and council officers who managed the project, and it's been finished to a very high standard, so thank you everyone. CEO, are there some public questions this evening?
Through Mayor, we have a number of public questions on tonight's that have been submitted in requirement in accordance with governance rules. You want me to read them out, or have you got this?
The first question I have is from Yasmin Mohammed. If Yasmin's here, would you like to read your question?
Yes, thank you. Got it memorised. Good evening. This is regarding number 1 Royal Court in North Warrnambool, which has been turned into a rooming house. It was originally a 4-bedroom house, which is now a 9-bedroom rooming house, which can accommodate up to 12 people. It has 2, to my knowledge, illegal carport spaces in front of the house in Balmoral Road. My question was, where are all these 12 people going to park? Because Royal Court is a very small court.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yasmin.
Through me, my intention would be, we've got 4 questions in relation to the same issue, so I'll do a consolidated response when all the questions have been asked.
Thank you, Yasmin. The next question concerning the same rooming house is from Dr. Michael Callahan. Would you like to read your question?
Yes, please, if I could. Effectively, Yasmin just sort of giving you a background of the story. It's included in the details that I've provided. Concerns are that when you look at the rooming house itself, one of the rooms is actually a shed that was converted into a bedroom that only has external access. And my reading of the rules is that rooming houses can only count bedrooms that have internal access. Just that one example makes me wonder whether they're in breach of other areas. My other major concern is that the surveyor that signed off on it is not a local surveyor, he's a Melbourne surveyor. The owner of the building is not a local resident. And this all appears to have happened outside of council's control. Residents weren't consulted. In a way, I think that's probably wrong when somebody from outside the area can make these sorts of changes to a building and in effect set up a business that affects people in that area without actually consulting council or that area. So my main question is, what actions can the WCC, Warrnambool City Council, take in order to protect the interests of legitimate local residents and ratepayers? In particular, we hear of other councils introducing all sorts of bylaws to limit the number of days similar properties can be rented, introducing fees and charges on such facilities to pay for local law enforcement. This is something the state government's done recently. There's no reason why the Warrnambool City Council couldn't do something similar. Installing no parking signs in the area to make it very clear that people at Wunraroon Court shouldn't be parking on that corner. It's illegal, but it shouldn't be left to the residents to inform people when they park in the wrong place. The other thing that concerns me is that when you look at Wunraroon Court itself, the bottom row can't park anywhere in there at all without restricting people's access in and outside of that area. So there's really only about 6 useful car spaces in that area. The Balmoral Road side, they can't park outside that property at all because it's too close to the corner. So I think these are all major concerns that the Warrnambool City Council, even though maybe they weren't consulted, perhaps have some sort of a power to limit what happens within that residence, even though it's no longer a residence. Thanks.
Thank you, Michael. We'll move on to a question from Brian Kelson because it's concerning all the same subject matter. So, Brian, if you'd like to come to the microphone.
Thank you for allowing me to put these couple of questions in. I haven't come across a rooming house before and don't really know the protocol, how it gets to be what it is. My two questions, and if I could just add a little bit to the end, that'd be great. My question is in relation to the rooming houses and the Warrnambool City Council laws. Section 3 of the council prescribed accommodation premises information act states that when an owner changes a residential house to a rooming house, that's basically a commercial dwelling, my understanding. A building permit must be obtained. As a result of this building permit being granted, are the neighbouring properties to be consulted? And the second part of the question is, when building permits are granted, how is car parking assessed with the possibility of 12 residents being at the one property? Given that this property was actually up for sale just recently as a 4-bedroom house, we're now quoting 9 bedrooms with 12 inhabitants, if you like. So I'm not terribly afraid with all this. Anybody that knows Balmoral Road and the particular court, Warren Court, that we're talking about, it's an extremely busy street. King's College is at the end. The buses are horrendous from morning till night. there's no car parking that can actually be taken up by the residents of this rooming house. There is none. So it just fails that how this could be given as a rooming house with these concerns. Garbage nights, even if they illegally parked on the nature strip, the bins can't be put out. There's just so much that seems to be wrong, and I'm hoping that the council can take this on notice, because this is not what I would like to see Warrnambool being. A $2,000 a week cash grab. That's what it's all about. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kelson.
Thank you for the extra time.
Yeah, that's okay. On the same subject, we also have a question from Philip Bannister, if he's here, if he'd like to step up to the microphone. Thank you, Philip.
I didn't bring my question, sorry, didn't write it down. But mine was just the same issue, just basically why is there no consultation with the local residents? That was pretty much it. Sorry.
Yeah, thank you, Philip. So
I'll try and answer those questions, and certainly if we require some more detail, we can follow up with Director in Planning. So in this case, no planning permit is required, and so planning permits are where consultation with neighbours occurs, and so the Victorian Government has issued consistent statewide laws that mean that no planning permit is required in this case. A building permit is required, and our investigations have shown that the building permit has been issued by a private building surveyor as is allowed. There is no requirement for the building surveyor, the private building surveyor, to consult with council or neighbours or residents. So that's the situation. I understand it might be frustrating, but that is the situation that exists under the Victorian, in Victoria at the moment. The premises have been inspected and issued with the necessary permits under the Public Health and Wellbeing Act, and Council's environmental health staff will have a role in the future to assess the suitability of the building, because it will need to be registered as a rooming house or commercial building. That our function in that is very much looking at public health issues. So it won't look at issues with amenity or car parking. It's quite a narrow focus. What I would note, and maybe of assistance to residents, is that the rooming house that is in discussion today is listed with the rooming house is listed on the publicly available rooming house register, which is done through Consumer Affairs. And in fact, Consumer Affairs do have the ability to inspect premises and ensure compliance with minimum standards. So that may be an avenue that residents can follow up. We can assist with that. In relation to concerns about car parking, we'll certainly make sure that the council's local laws team are monitoring that situation, and if necessary, we can look at a signage and those type of things. But our controls are limited. So in summary, that's where we are.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Andrew. We now have a question from Joan Kelson. Joan, if you'd like to come up to the microphone, please.
Thank you very much. I'm asking this question on behalf of the Warrnambool Ratepayers Association. The association has been contacted on a number of occasions regarding the lift at the Pavilion Cafe. The most recent was from a resident who attended the cafe for Father's Day function and become very distressed when he had to push his wife in a wheelchair up the long, steep ramp. It's quite steep because not everybody's able-bodied to be able to push a wheelchair. And in fact, he actually said that it spoiled their whole day. So my question is, what are the Warrnambool City Council plans to restore the use of the lift?
Thank you, Joan. So, yeah.
So thank you for the question. The lift at the pavilion has been assessed, it's not able to be fixed or restored. Given the marine environment and salt, it's been assessed as being, it's not fixable. The estimate of putting in a new lift that was done in 2020 was around $800,000. That's currently not in this year's budget. It is something that council can consider as a future budget item going forward.
Thank you. We now have questions from Laxon Fowler, if Laxon would like to come forward.
Thank you. I've got two questions on behalf of Helen Brown, who's overseas still at the moment, and two from myself, all concerning the West Warrnambool Neighbourhood House. And I'd like to just thank the council for accepting the questions. I was 4 minutes late handing them in, so thank you for accepting them. So Helen's questions first. Number one, when are the results of the public consultation process to be made public? Second question, how does council govern and manage its responsibilities with respect to the West Warrnambool Neighbourhood House to ensure that safe and legal activities are conducted in this council-owned facility for its entire operational life cycle? And my two questions. Number one, given the non-ideal nature of the temporary facility located within the Picton Avenue Park, co-joined with public children's playground, is council actually free and able to review and, if prudent, reverse its decision to progress this temporary option? I say that because the decision to progress it was made prior to the consultation even beginning. For example, two houses within the budget and seemingly suitable for the purpose on Tate Crescent have been on the market for several weeks. Can or have these been considered instead? And if not, why not? And my second question, council appears to have avoided saying or distributing anything about the purpose, activities and public risk issues with regard to the West Warrnambool Neighbourhood House, leaving same to a committee whose relationship has not been disclosed. But it is not part of council itself because the advocacy group had to make a public submission as a member of the public in this forum. With respect to child and safety risk issues, what, if any, constraints are placed on the activities which may take place in the West Warrnambool Neighbourhood House? May any local person or group establish any activity at the house? What prevents unsafe, illegal, antisocial activities from occurring? Again, for the duration of the operational life cycle. Thank you.
Thank you, Laxon.
Mayor, I might ask our Director of Community Development Ingrid Bishop to answer these questions, given she's been leading this project.
Thank you. Go ahead, Ingrid.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, the first question from Helen. So the initial analysis of the survey results will be shared during the focus group discussions. So those first focus group discussions are this Wednesday. Yeah, and also on Saturday as well. And the details of the public consultation process will then be included in the report to council as well, and that's anticipated to be the end of the year. In regard to question two, council will govern and manage its responsibilities with respect to the West Warrnambool Neighbourhood House in exactly the same way that it does with all services and programs, particularly around the application of the 11 child safety standards, which are core principles that council adheres to while operating any programmed activity, and the West Warrnambool Neighbourhood House will be no different. The governance and how we manage the neighbourhood house, so that sits within my directorate under the branch of Capacity, Access and Inclusion. We have an annual work plan that is approved by myself, but also we have to report on that quarterly to DFFH, Department of Families, Fairness and Housing, and the Neighbourhood Houses Victoria Department. And they provide constructive feedback on the work plan, and annually council also has to provide an accredited report in line with the funding that we receive for the West Warrnambool Neighbourhood House back to those agencies as well. In regard to question three from yourself. So as you've mentioned, council, with the decision to progress with a temporary facility, so council has not made a decision on how it will progress with that facility, and it will make that decision based on data once the engagement process has been finalised and once we've been able to provide council with the service delivery model, costings, etc. in relation to that. Thank you for the suggestion with regard to purchasing a local house. So the option of purchasing a property had been considered, but when we looked at the current price of properties, knowing also that we would have to put in significant investment to retrofit it, change design, etc., to make sure that it was actually fit for purpose, that was a considerable cost as well, noting that this is a temporary facility. However, going forward, should council deem that that could be a permanent facility, that would be something that council will absolutely look at and consider. With your second question, Mr. Fowler, so council has previously stated what the purpose and current potential activities of the neighbourhood house could be. In fact, we've included those questions of what potential activities could be in the recent survey that we did in regard to the community engagement process. Just lost my spot there. Just want to make sure that I cover all the things that you've said. Our council has also stated that it's very important for all the information relating to the project to be released to community at the same time, so everyone gets the same information and also provides great context for community discussion. That information will be released at the focus groups, as previously mentioned, including any information about risk issues. And the forum on Wednesday and Saturday, there will be a dedicated component in that focus group to talk about risks that council has identified, but also risks that the community has identified through the recent community engagement process, where council received approximately 250 surveys from local residents. In regard to the reference committee that supports the West Warrnambool Neighbourhood House, they are not a decision-making forum. They provide advice, support, do some advocacy work on behalf of council and engage with local stakeholders to make sure that we've got good, fruitful, productive relationships. So that's why they submitted a submission for in support of the West Warrnambool Neighbourhood House, because that's their right to be able to provide a submission. And just touching in closing then with respect to the issues of child safety, just want to reiterate that they are core principles of council and that, as I mentioned before, with any programs and services that are offered by council, we will be following exactly the same process to ensure that we are compliant. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Laxon. Thank you, Ingrid. Councillors, we'll now be moving on to the officers' report section of the agenda. Item 7.1, the presentation of the annual report 2022-2023. Agenda page number 5, the Director of Corporate Strategies. This is presented by myself. So it's with great pleasure that I actually present the annual report of Council for the 2022-2023 financial year. The report provides an opportunity to reflect on the year, the work that has been done and achievements of Council and the community. And a number of major infrastructure projects were completed towards the end of 2022. And I'll begin with the Library and Learning Centre. This was a project completed in partnership with South West TAFE and the Department of Education and shaped by the thousands of library members. The library officially opened last October and it's an outstanding success. It's won architecture awards, but more importantly, it has won over a new cohort of residents. Membership has grown, visitation has grown, borrowings have grown, participation in the expanded library program has grown, and it has become something of a go-to meeting place for all groups of ages, of all ages. It's also now a visitor attraction and a great place for people to escape a wintry day. And I think the response to the new library shows that our community values education very highly. It shows that we want our children to learn and we place great importance on lifelong learning. So no matter what your circumstances, you can find a place in the library to read, to study, to create and to fire your imagination. We acknowledge the support of the Victorian Government in funding the construction of the magnificent building that so cleverly blends the old and new. We also thank the philanthropic organisations that support the new library. The new Edwards Bridge was also opened late last year, and this is a vitally important piece of infrastructure that ensures we have 2 entry and exit points to the foreshore. The new bridge restores heavy vehicle access to the Port of Warrnambool. It's also very much a 21st century design with dedicated cycling and pedestrian paths. It's also an incredibly robust structure that I'm sure will serve the community, just as the previous bridge did for decades to come. We opened the new Adventure Play space at Lake Patobe, and this caused great excitement among young and the young at heart, and fellow councillor Max Taylor could not resist zipping down the big slide on opening day. The Lake Patobe precinct is cherished by residents and loved just as much by visitors to Warrnambool. It's a huge part of what makes our city so attractive and livable. The investment in Lake Patobe ensures this vitally important space keeps delivering for our city. We also welcome funding from the Victorian Government, matched by Council, to start work on Bryla Reserve. We're really fortunate to have a number of community-owned spaces close to growing residential areas, and Bryla in the northeast of the city is a big part of our future. We've continued to add hundreds of metres of high-quality footpaths to our pedestrian network around the city, which is a key to encouraging people to walk as an alternative to driving. Of course, council is more than infrastructure, it's about services for people. Aquazone, the Lighthouse Theatre, the stadium and the art gallery mean that we are a city where recreation and culture play a big role in our lives. Behind the scenes, we have a team of people who care for others in the community, our home support workers and the crew at Archie Graham, who create a very vibrant community centre. And I should mention our outdoor staff. Every year without fail, the Community Satisfaction Survey tells us that our community feels our outdoor spaces are important and they are pleased with the effort we make to maintain them. Council must also have an eye for the future. We need to plan. There's the planning for the changes that will help happen to the built infrastructure in our cities. We have seen work begin on flood investigations in South Warrnambool and Allensford. We have seen planning underway for a strategic framework plan for Bushfield and Woodford. Council is also acting to prepare for climate change, and earlier this year we organised and hosted the Health in a Changing Climate Forum, which brought together health and climate expertise to discuss how this challenge can be addressed. Along with describing activities, the annual report also contains comprehensive information about the state of our finances. We are in a sound financial position. We have cash and investments of $48.3 million, up from $37.8 million last year. Our revenue of $106.3 million was up from $93.3 million last year. Our borrowings have reduced by $300,000, and we recorded an income statement surplus of $19.05 million. And when you consider that all the taxes paid, about 3.5% goes to local government, and so I believe we do provide value for money. But we can't do this without the ideas, inspiration and feedback from our community. Planning for the 2024-2025 financial year is soon to start, and in December, Council will begin engaging with the community as to what our council plan priorities should be and how our budget can best deliver for the community. There'll be more to come on this over the coming weeks. I'd like to conclude by thanking my fellow councillors for their commitment to serving Warrnambool. Thank you to council staff for implementing the council plan, and a huge thank you to the community for helping to make our city so vibrant, so welcoming and such a beautiful place to live. The purpose of this report is for the council to present the to present the 2022-2023 annual report to the community. Councillors, do I have a mover? Councillor Ziegler, thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Paspaliaris, thank you. Councillor Ziegler, would you like to speak to the recommendation?
I would, thanks, Mayor. The annual report reflects a fairly tumultuous year. A bit like the Parsons egg, there were some good bits and some bad bits right throughout the year. It's been overshadowed by the fact that most of the good bits are particularly good, like the play space at Lake Patobe, the Edwards Bridge, the Lighthouse Theatre, recording record attendances and box office figures, some really good things. I have pleasure in being able to recommend that the Council adopts the annual report 2022-23.
Thank you, Councillor Ziegler. Councillor Paspaliaris, do you wish to speak?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. This annual report is an exhaustive look at how Council's year has been. It outlines Council's operations, its people, its management, its performance, and within the report also sits, as mentioned, the annual financial report. So Council is obviously a business that operates a whole host of services and programs, and it's responsible for maintaining close to $887 million worth of assets for the Warrnambool community, and this includes land, buildings, roads, bridges, footpaths, recreation and leisure assets, parks and open space. The general message repeated throughout the report is that the steep increase in materials and ongoing labour shortages do continue to take their toll on capital works costs. Impressively, the report specifies that aquatic patronage has significantly increased in the last 12 months, and I think this further demonstrates a very strong need to plan and upgrade our ageing and outdated facility. The aquatic strategy is not completed, but has commenced and is due to be completed in the 23-24 year. The impending CBD parking strategy comes up in this report as well. It's still an ongoing project which has suffered frustrating delays. I think it really needs to progress significantly as it is such a big issue and repeating issue in our city. The strategy is important to help guide future decision making with changes and improvements to parking. Council is also committed to giving back through the Community Development Fund, which has either fully or partially funded over 29 groups during the 22-23 year, totalling around $110,000. The annual report also lists other details, additional elements around contracts that Council have entered into, as well as a list of infrastructure and developer contributions received. Things like non-monetary assets worth over $6 million were received by Council, including land, drainage, roads, footpaths and the like. And these are things that Council are now responsible for maintaining. It's encouraging to read that Council is preparing a business case to renew the Dharma for another 5 years, which not only infers a level of success of this agreement, but a demand for it to continue. The successful Solstice Search Party event run by Council had postcode data that indicated that 20% of attendees were from outside the Warrnambool municipality. Whilst this event is very much weather dependent, I think it continues to prove to me that people within and outside of our postcode are very eager to embrace further winter-based events in our city. It's at a time of year that is generally lacking with regards to regular event programming compared to the jam-packed summer tourist season. And financially speaking, as has been mentioned, cash and investments have increased in value on last year. And there appears to be a steady pay down of borrowings. And Council doesn't have any intention of further borrowings for the immediate future, which should keep debt and payback of loans steady. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Paspaliaris. Does any other councillor wish to speak? No, that being the case then, Councillor Ziegler, do you wish to make any further statement?
A few closing remarks, if I might. Thank you, Mayor. Overall, the report reflects that Warrnambool's in a healthy position financially and socially. It must be recognised through this report that council is more than just the 7 people that sit here at these tables. It's a huge business organisation, as alluded to by Councillor Paspaliaris, and recognition must go to the officers and staff who make this stuff happen. It should be also recognised that these such successes as the financial health that Warrnambool has is reflected in the ability to make contributions in the Community Development Fund. We allocated 110,000 to 29 different clubs and organisations in our city. And these projects and programs delivered by the clubs and organisations helped in this way by council are enormous value to the community. The significant planning projects were embarked upon. They're all reflected in the annual report, including the South Warrnambool floodplain and the Bushfield Woodford Framework Plan. Are all incredibly important things. All of the work that happens with that goes through our staff and officers. Again, I commend my fellow councillors to adopt this annual report.
Thank you, Councillor Ziegler. I'll now put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. Carried unanimously. We'll now move on to item 7.2, the Audit and Risk Committee Biannual Report of Activities, January to June 2023, agenda page number 8, the Directorate Corporate Strategies. The purpose of this report is to present the Audit and Risk Committee Biannual Report, January to June 2023. Councillors, do I have a recommendation? Councillor Blaine, what is your recommendation?
I'd like to move the council adopt the Audit and Risk Committee biannual report, which details activities of the committee covering the meetings held on the 7th of March and 15th of May 2023.
Thank you, Councillor. Do I have a seconder for the recommendation? Councillor Paspaliaris. Councillor Blaine, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Arnott. Just quickly, this is a requirement of the Audit and Risk Committee to report to council and have it put forward at a public meeting. I'd like to thank Richard for stepping in March as chair, and our new permanent chair, Kevin Ledden, for their support and their work over the last 6 months, and Ash for his continued support as well. I would like to just point out that with our internal audits, it's actually been really positive to see that there are high risk recommendations being put forward and medium risks, because the whole idea of the internal audit is to catch issues before they become issues. So it's actually really positive to see that our internal auditors are actually working hard in order to ensure that, you know, our policies and our processes are getting better and better as we continue to move forward, and it'll be an ongoing process. And it has been really good as well moving forward in the audit and risk to see that from previous audits that recommendations are being completed and are being implemented to better protect the organisation of council. The external audit went really well, and thank you to Nick and thank you to Nick with RSD Audit for all the work that we've done there, and we've just seen that in the annual report. I'd just like to say that, yeah, I think it is good that I think the audit and risk have been engaged, and we'll see it in the next 2 items where the audit and risk are actually putting forward changes to try and better protect the organisation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Blaine. Councillor Paspaliaris, would you like to speak?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Just quickly, I'd also like to thank council officers, Councillor Blaine and independent members for their ongoing contribution to this committee, and thank you to Chairperson Kevin Ledden for his report. From my observations, there appears to be a consistently cooperative relationship between council officers and auditors. There have been 8 audits completed up to date, with another 2 to be completed by end of the calendar year. And I think there has been a big effort to action some outstanding items, and given the number of recent audits, a new number of actions awaiting implementation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Paspaliaris. Is there any other councillor who wishes to speak to the recommendation? No, thank you. Obviously a very important committee, and it has been noted that both the internal and external auditors have informed the Chair that they are very satisfied with the sound working relationship they have with management. So I think that's augurs very well for the future. Councillor Blaine, do you wish to add anything before closing?
No, thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. I'll now put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. We'll move on to item 7.3, the privacy policy. Agenda page number 10, directed executive services. The purpose of this report is to adopt the amended privacy policy 2023. Are there any questions before I seek a motion? No. Thank you. Do I have a recommendation? Councillor Blaine, thank you. What is your recommendation?
I'd like to move that Council adopt the attached privacy policy 2023 and revoke the previous privacy policy adopted 4th March 2019.
Thank you, Councillor Blaine. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Taylor, thank you. Councillor Blaine, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Arnott. Just quickly on the policy, Council, as we've spoken about earlier tonight, Council runs a myriad of different businesses and collects a lot of different personal and sensitive information from a lot of different individuals that access our services. And because we offer so many different services, so many of the different areas in which we are involved actually have different requirements in order to meet the privacy requirements in the different legislations, especially when it comes to our maternal and child health, home community care, childcare services, and environmental health. These are all really important. I think the new policy actually helps a lot in identifying key individuals who are key roles that are actually responsible in order to be able to protect and hold account and be able to be held accountable as well from the community. The role that Council plays in protecting the data that we actually collect through our services. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Blaine. Councillor Taylor, do you wish to make comment?
Thank you, Mayor Arnott. Last reviewed in 2019 and lacked specific guidance for a number of high risk and sensitive areas, being the 4 areas mentioned previously by Councillor Blaine. I am satisfied with these amendments to the current documents. Thank you, Mayor Arnott.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Do any other councillors wish to speak? No, well, I'll just highlight once again, as my previous councillors have said, the importance of guarding this very sensitive information and making sure that it is handled correctly and in the right manner. So, but Councillor Blaine, do you wish to say anything to close?
No, thank you, Mayor Arnott.
Thank you. So I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. We will now move on to item 7.4, the Fraud and Corruption Control Policy. Agenda page number 12, Directed Governance. This report provides an overview of proposed changes to the Fraud and Corruption Policy and Procedure, and provides a draft policy and a draft procedure for Council's adoption. Councillors, are there any questions before I seek a motion? No, thank you. Do I have a motion? Councillor Blaine, what is your motion?
I'd like to move that Council adopts the attached Fraud and Corruption Control Policy 2023 and the attached Fraud and Corruption Procedure 2023.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Paspaliaris, thank you. Councillor Blaine, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Arnott. This was really important when the Audit and Risk Committee met on the 29th of August. It's good to see that the recommendations have been put forward. The role of external auditors isn't actually to detect fraud, is in the traditional sense. So it's good to see we've had that reference taken out. One thing that I actually think is really important though is fraud not being reported to one of the directors. So it's not reported to corporate strategies anymore. It's reported to the manager of governance, who actually answers directly to the CEO, who is then, you know, the only employee of council. So I think that's really good that that's actually been taken out of the hands of the directors. So I think this will actually be a big step forward in our fraud and corruption control and better investigations moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Blaine. Councillor Paspaliaris, do you wish to speak?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I'd just add that that I do support the recommendation in particular to being the reporting of fraud to manager of governance to help avoid any potential conflict of interest within Directorate of Corporate Strategies. The Audit and Risk Committee does monitor council's fraud control processes periodically, and internal audits support fraud prevention. Council is also committed to outlining fraud control with fraud awareness training and education on ethical behaviour within the organisation, so that is also implemented regularly. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Paspaliaris. Once again, a very important document. It does help shape the way council and the organisation conducts itself, deals with these types of matters. I fully support the recommended changes, and I'm happy to move to offer my support to this document. So, Councillor Blaine, is there anything you'd further wish to add?
No, thank you, Mayor.
Okay. I will now put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. Carried unanimously. We will now move on to item 7.5, DP 2022-0007- Proposed Development Plan for 191 to 201 Morris Road. Agenda page number 14, Directorate City Growth. This report considers the development plan submitted for 191-201 Morris Road, Warrnambool, and recommends that Council approve the development plan as submitted. Councillors, are there any questions regarding this recommendation? No, thank you. Do I have a recommendation? Councillor Ziegler, what is your recommendation?
Thank you, Mayor. That having considered all the matters normally required under Section 60 of the Act for Planning Applications, Council approves the development plan under the relevant provisions of the Warrnambool Planning Scheme in respect of the land described as part of Lot 1 on TP 961748, known as 191 to 201 Morris Road, Warrnambool, which seeks to facilitate future residential development on the site.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for the motion? Councillor Taylor, thank you. Councillor Ziegler, do you wish to speak to the motion?
I would briefly, thanks, Mayor, yes. While these kinds of developments are not everyone's cup of tea, they do serve a purpose for many. There are precedents. Langley Close off Karamat Road is a similar sort of development, although smaller. And it will be another in the range of answers to the housing availability crisis, in that it provides a fair range of accommodation options for a lot of different families and people. I'm more than happy to recommend that this particular motion goes through.
Thank you. Councillor Taylor, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor Arnott. This plan consists of 50 individually titled lots suitable in its context, which can positively contribute to the lack of housing supply in Warrnambool, integrating with the existing neighbourhood character, well located to schools, walking trails and public transport. The amended plan was received by Council in September, reducing the number of dwellings from 58 to 46, also the number of lots from 58 to 50 increased car parking spaces and increased green space. So I do not have a problem with this plan. Thank you, Miranda.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Are there any other councillors who wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Paspaliaris.
This development plan was advertised for 2 weeks with no submissions received. The development plan outlines an entirely residential development, which I think is very good. It also had information pertaining to an intended subdivision at this stage into 50 lots, which was reduced, as Councillor Taylor said, from 58. There were also increased parking spaces from 21 originally to now 32, which doesn't include the car parks on each lot. And I guess in keeping with the general dwelling types on Morris Road, there are larger lots planned to front Morris Road, which I think is sympathetic to the area. I am concerned, however, about there being no footpaths planned within the development, but at this stage, being that a separate planning permit will be required before any development can proceed, I'm comfortable to support the development plan itself.
Thank you, Councillor Paspaliaris. Is there any other councillor who wishes to speak? Councillor Blaine.
I do agree. The development plan, I think one of the biggest issues, and it's been outlined in reports time and time again, is lack of diversity in housing stocks in Warrnambool. And to see something like this coming through is exciting. That they've chosen Warrnambool, and it should help to ease some of the housing issues that we've seen moving forward. And as Councillor Paspaliaris said, there are the bigger lots at the front to try and be more sympathetic onto Morris Road, and hopefully when it gets to building permit stage, it'll keep pretty closely with the development plan design. Thank you.
Are there any other councillors who wish to speak? I'll just reiterate, my fellow councillors, here in Warrnambool we have a critical housing shortage, and we are faced with an almost non-existent rental market, and I see a development like this hoping and helping to ease some pressure within that market. I'd also just like to make note, I commend this development plan and the ones executing it on listening to some councillor feedback about reducing the number of lots, increasing some parking spaces and some more green space. So it is actually really good to hear that they've taken some of those thoughts of ours on board. Councillor Ziegler, do you wish to make further comment before closing?
Just a quick one, thanks, Mayor. Yes, the Councillor Blaine, Councillor Paspaliaris' point about the 4 major blocks facing Morris Road being larger is one of the main reasons why I look favourably upon this development, in that they're not hugely different from the existing housing stock along Morris Road. As I said in my putting of the motion, that it's not everyone's cup of tea, but it will suit a lot of people, and we do need the housing.
Thank you, Councillor Ziegler. I'll now put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Now move on to item 7.6, the Warrnambool Planning Scheme Review, agenda page number 20, Directorate City Growth. This report provides information on a review of the Warrnambool Planning Scheme and recommends that the review be adopted and forwarded to the Minister for Planning. The report also recommends that the future Strategic Works Program be endorsed by Council and set the priorities for Council's future strategic project. Councillors, are there any questions before I seek a motion? No. Councillors, do I have a recommendation? Councillor Ziegler, what is your recommendation?
That Council adopts the Warrnambool Planning Scheme Review 2023 in accordance with Section 12B(5) of the Planning Environment Act 1987, forward a copy of the adopted Warrnambool Planning Scheme Review 2023 to the Minister for Planning. 3, pursuant to Section 8A of the Planning Environment Act, request authorisation from the Minister for Planning to prepare a planning scheme review, planning scheme amendment, attachment 2. And 4, following the authorisation for the Minister for Planning, in accordance with Section 9 of the Act, prepare and exhibit an amendment to the Warrnambool Planning Scheme in accordance with the Planning Scheme Review Ordinance Amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Ziegler. Do I have a seconder for the motion? Councillor Paspaliaris, thank you. Councillor Ziegler, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Just briefly, thanks, Mayor. Hopefully this review will fill some of the holes and omissions that have been found, shortcomings in the current scheme, and reduce unnecessary work requirements. One of the features I noticed in the notes to this was that it will actually eliminate some of the work requirements, and to that end I think that it's introducing efficiencies that we desperately need for the planning scheme.
Thank you, Councillor Ziegler. Councillor Paspaliaris, do you wish to speak?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Just that the last review took place in 2018 and a review is required every 4 years. It has recommended some high priorities for council. The majority of changes appear to be within the policy appear to be policy neutral, but some are indicative of implementing both green Warrnambool and healthy Warrnambool plans into the planning scheme. It also recommends less objectives within some development plans to ensure that this complies with ministerial direction. The review also talks to car parking through the municipality, which leads back to our annual report earlier that indicated delay of this important issue. A final interesting point is that planning decisions made by council resolution only account for 0.8% of total planning decisions, which I found, quite interesting myself. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Paspaliaris. Is there any other councillors who wish to speak? No, thank you. I don't have anything further to add to this scheme review, so I will put the... sorry, Councillor Ziegler, do you wish to say anything more? No, thank you.
Sorry.
Oh, Councillor Taylor, you wish to say something?
Thank you, Mayor Arnott. I'd like to see the council put more time and effort into a couple of items mentioned in the planning review, one being the Warrnambool Foreshore Reserve vegetation action to be implemented. It's very sad to see what's happening along our promenade right now, that with weeds and not so very nice vegetation taking over our promenade. So as I would like to see this action happen as soon as possible to make our promenade a little more acceptable. And also the Warrnambool Foreshore Plan Precinct is also mentioned in the review. I'd like to see that brought forward and action taken upon it as soon as possible, because most promenades you walk along in Australia, seashore promenades, you'll get a great view of the ocean. But unfortunately, our promenade from the Flume to the Pavilion, you very rarely get a view of the ocean. So I'd like to see this corrected down the path in the near future, and our promenade now is getting quite old and needs to be revitalised, and having part of the sea view implemented along the promenade would be a step in the right direction. Thank you, Mayor Arnott.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Ziegler, I'll reiterate, do you wish to say anything upon closing?
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. I'll now put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Move on to item 7.7, the Economic Development Strategy, a public consultation feedback. Agenda page number 24, Directorate City Growth. The purpose of this report is for Council to adopt the Economic Development Strategy 2023 to 2028, noting the feedback received during the public consultation period and adjustments made. Councillors, are there any questions regarding this recommendation before I seek a motion? No. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Taylor, what is your motion?
Thank you, Mayor Arnott. I'd like to move a motion the Council adopt the Economic Development Strategy 2023 to 2028 with adjustments taken on board during the public consultation period as outlined under the issues section of the report as per the officer's recommendation be accepted. Thank you, Mayor Arnott.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Do I have a seconder for the motion? Councillor Paspaliaris, thank you. Councillor Taylor, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor Arnott. I'd like to say well done and thank you to the 7 community members in Laxonfala, Lisa McLeod, Penny Irons, Leanne Williams, Rod Brugman, Luke Han from the Warrnambool Racing Club and Carly Jordan from the Fletcher Jones Foundation for their time and effort in submitting their views on the Warrnambool's economic strategy and advise that all their input will be well considered and taken into account. Thank you, Mayor Arnott.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Paspaliaris, do you wish to make comment? No. Is there any other councillors who wish to speak? No. I'll just reiterate, look, thank you to everyone for making the time and the effort to lodge a submission. It is much appreciated. We do take on board that feedback, and there have been high-level strategic considerations are now contained within that within the strategy. So thank you, Councillor Taylor. Do you wish to make comment to close?
No, thank you, Mayor Arnott.
Thank you. I'll now put the motion to vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 7.8, the City Centre Central Bus Interchange, agenda page number 28, Directorate City Infrastructure. The purpose of this report is to begin community consultation on the Lava Street Bus Exchange. Councillors, are there any questions? Councillors, do I have a recommendation? Councillor Ziegler, what is your recommendation?
That Council implements a community consultation plan for the Lava Street bus interchange in collaboration with the Department of Transport and Planning and Warrnambool Bus Lines.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for the motion? Councillor Taylor. Councillor Ziegler, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thanks, Mayor. The interchange is a difficult proposition in all respects. It was a difficult proposition in Koroit Street. It's just as difficult, but perhaps not quite so cramped, in Lava Street. There are many aspects of traffic and pedestrian access that need to be addressed, and there are certain rules that we have to abide by with respect to the Victorian Government movement and place framework for bus interchanges. So it's vitally important for people of Warrnambool who have an interest in the bus interchange to actually make a contribution to the consultation plan so that ultimately we get it as good as we can. It's a vital part of public transport for Warrnambool. It's going to become more important. We need to get it right, and we can only get it right if we're guided by consultation submissions from the public.
Thank you, Councillor Ziegler. Councillor Taylor, do you wish to speak?
Thank you, Mayor Arnott. Bus users must be made safe and comfortable in facilities when waiting to board a bus. I see the current site in Lava Street as the most appropriate, suitable and accessible site for the bus interchange in the CBD. But there remains quite a few issues to resolve, including a safe pedestrian crossing, easy access to the footpath, safe interchange distances for the buses, and safe and comfortable locations while you wait. In other issues include CCVT filming, lighting, toilets and seats while you're waiting for a bus. Funding is a vital necessity from various funding streams to ensure the level of service is met in the near future. Thank you, Mayor Arnott.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Are there any other councillors who wish to speak to this motion? Councillor Paspaliaris.
I'd just like to add that I think with regards to there being multiple stakeholders within this project, that should give weight to hopefully things like funding for CCTV, which has fallen down during other applications where there's just been support from, say, police and those sorts of groups. So I'm hoping that there will be, a little bit more strength to some of the funding options. I also feel that this location is about as good as we can find within the central area of Warrnambool. It does provide a very wide street in order to be able to plan and execute an effective central bus interchange. I certainly think that consultation is required for this type of plan. I would also reiterate that safety is of utmost importance for both users and bus drivers and other community members. Motorists along that way, other pedestrians. At the moment, it's a little bit of a mishmash of lots of things put together. So I think this would be a very good plan to actually structure something that will work with regards to safety being a very high priority. But I'd also make a point and say that respect by users and the general community of the amenities in this area would also be my expectation, because at the moment, I think that has been lacking, given things like smashed glass in the existing bus shelter on the northern side of Lava Street, as well as litter strewn about within metres of the public bin provided. So I do very much support consultation for this project, but I also feel that it will be a reflection on the community as to how well it's looked after once it is provided. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Paspaliaris. Well, any other councillors wish to speak? No. Once again, an important piece of community consultation. We do need the community input here. There are a lot of groups, user groups, that will be a part of this. I agree with my fellow councillors that I do think the Lava Street position is the best position if we need a central bus stop. However, there are some issues around that area that need to be explored, and as we've said, safety is the number one concern, and we will need to pursue funding to make this, to realise this piece of infrastructure. Are there any other councillors who wish to speak? No. Upon closing, Councillor Ziegler, is there anything else you wish to add?
Yeah.
Thank you. I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. We'll move on to agenda number 7.9, the Warrnambool Invasive Plant and Animal Framework, agenda page number 31, Directorate City Infrastructure. This report outlines the Warrnambool Invasive Plant and Animal Framework and the threats and actions IP&A data set, and recommends that it is endorsed by Council. Are there any questions before I seek a motion? Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Ziegler, what is your motion?
That Council adopts the Warrnambool Invasive Plant and Animal Framework and the associated threats and actions invasive pest and animal data set.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for the motion? Councillor Blaine, thank you. Councillor Ziegler, do you wish to speak to the motion?
I think it's very important that we actually do adopt this invasive plant and animal framework as we need to pin our efforts to control pest animals and weeds infestation in our public areas. It's incredibly important that we keep a handle on these things. They can get away from us. There are, as Councillor Taylor's already mentioned this afternoon, there's been a huge proliferation of undesirable weeds and plants along the foreshore, but this happens throughout our municipality. We've got to have this framework so that we've got references from which to work.
Thank you, Councillor Ziegler. Councillor Blaine, do you wish to speak?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Arnott. It's been really positive to see that we've actually received 8 submissions from different groups and a lot of the feedback has actually been incorporated. One of the biggest things that we have seen since we first put this out for consultation was Agriculture Victoria suggesting that we move from a pest, plant and animal framework to an invasive plant and animal framework to really address the urgency and invasiveness of these different flora and fauna in our beautiful environment. So it's been really good, and it's been really well done to see how much actually has been incorporated into the policy. So I'm actually really happy. I'm happy to support this.
Thank you, Councillor Blaine. Are there any other councillors who wish to speak? No, thank you. Okay, being no further speakers, Councillor Ziegler, would you like to close?
Just one quick comment. Apart from the agricultural department mentioned by Councillor Blaine, I found it heartening that we were able to include a reference for the Paria statement from Eastern Maar Aboriginal Corporation. I think that's incredibly important, and I'm gratified to see that it has been included in the framework.
Thank you. I'll now put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. We'll move on to item 7.10, the Advisory Committee reports, agenda page number 37, Directorate Executive Services. This report contains the record of 1 Advisory Committee meeting and 1 reference group meeting. Are there any questions? No. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Taylor, what's your motion?
I'd like to move that the records of the Warrnambool Airport Reference Group meeting held on the 28th of August 2023 and the Planning Advisory Committee meeting held on the 6th of September 2023 be accepted. Thank you, Mayor Arnott.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Do I have a seconder for the motion? Councillor Paspaliaris, thank you. Councillor Taylor, do you wish to speak to the motion?
No, thank you, Mayor Arnott.
Councillor Paspaliaris, no, thank you. Any councillors wish to speak? No. I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 7.11, informal meetings of council reports, agenda page number 38, Directorate Executive Services. The purpose of this report is to provide council with copies of informal meetings of council, previously known as Assembly of Councillor Records, as previously required under section 80A2 of the Local Government Act 1989. Are there any questions before I seek a motion? Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Blaine, what is your motion?
I'd like to move the record of informal meetings of council held on the 11th, 18th and 25th of September 2023 be received.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Ziegler, thank you. Councillor Blaine, do you wish to speak to the motion?
No, thank you, Mayor Arnott.
Councillor Ziegler, do you wish to speak?
No, thank you, Mayor Arnott.
Are there any other councillors who wish to speak? No. We'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 7.7, the Mayoral and Chief Executive Officer Council Activities Summary Report, agenda page number 39, Directorate Executive Services. This report summarises Mayoral and Chief Executive Officer Council activities since the last ordinary meeting, which particularly relate to key social, economic and environmental issues of direct relevance to the Warrnambool community. Are there any questions, councillors? No. Do I have a motion? Councillor Paspaliaris, what's your motion?
That the Mayoral and Chief Executive Officer Council Activities Summary Report be received.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for the motion? Councillor Taylor. Councillor Paspaliaris, is there anything you wish to say? Councillor Taylor?
I'd just like to comment on the official opening of the McGinnon amenities block on the 28th of September as to how wonderful it has come up, and I'm sure it'll serve the community and be a great asset for the Warrnambool people in the future. Thank you, Miranda.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Are there any other councillors who wish to speak? No. I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 8, any notices of motion?
No.
We'll move on to item 9, any general business. Councillors, are there any items of general business? No. CEO, any received notice of any items of urgent business?
No, Mayor.
No. Right, we'll move on to section 11, which is the closed section of the meeting, and there are confidential items for consideration tonight. Can I have a councillor move a motion to close the meeting to the public? Councillor Blaine, thank you. And do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Paspaliaris, thank you. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. I therefore declare the meeting closed to the public at 7:01. And can I please ask those in the gallery now to depart the meeting